we can do and how we can kind of better position us in a sort of a better position us in a sort of a kind of a situation, and how we can better create value from resource and capabilities. We try to understand resource-based view. We try to understand dynamic capability theory. So that is something we have covered. Now, today we will be kind of moving on to strategy formulation. So if you look at the diagram, yes, I mean the first class we talked about the strategy, as I mentioned. We covered both internal and external. Covered both internal and external analysis, and we used the Excel file in terms of like understanding the internal and external kind of environment, like what could happen internally, what could happen externally, and how those are like shaping the strategies of the organization. So that is something we have covered. Now we will be focusing on strategy formulation. So where we will be kind of focusing on differentiation, cost leadership. Those are the things we will discuss. About blue ocean strategy. Those are the things we will be kind of discussing today. That is the part of like our today's discussion. So if you look at the slide, for your strategic analysis, it is more about we are analyzing the internal and external factors which can kind of shape the strategy of an organization. Therefore, like the answer we are giving to the question, which is how can a firm's competitive advantage be explained? Like what is competitive advantage? That is something we try to understand. Like competing between kind of firms, competing with our competitor, competing with like someone who can sort of just start business, like how we can kind of better understand that. But then in a formulation, it is more about the question we would like to answer, how can a firm strategy be made? Like what should we do? Whether we should focus on cost or differentiation, blue ocean strategy, what exactly we should do. So that is a sort of question we would like to answer based on kind of our today's lecture. So these are kind of learning outcomes. You can always read later. It doesn't make any sense to kind of focus on. Now, the question I would like to ask, just a simple thing, just a simple question. How can a firm increase profit in a business? Let's say you are making 1 million. Let's say you are making 1 million dong every day, and you want to kind of make 1.5 million dong every day. What you can do? Just a simple question. Girls, you are generating 1 million every day. You want to generate 1.5 million every day. What should you do? Sell more? Yes, very straightforward. Sell more. Or, let's say, decrease the cost. For example, if I used to sort of create a product where manufacturing cost is like, let's say, 500,000, now the manufacturing cost is like 250,000. I can make more money if I can reduce the cost. Very simple analysis. So, two things can happen. I want to increase the profit. Let's say, minimize the cost. Yes, I will be able to increase the profit. At the same time, I can increase the value. I can increase the value, sales price of the product will increase. The moment sales price of the product will increase, immediately I will make more money. So previously, let's say for example, if you look at Apple product, if they increase the price by increasing the value, that can also happen as well. So you can kind of do both things. You can increase the price, you can decrease the manufacturing cost. So if we do simultaneously, like trying to decrease the cost of manufacturing a product, trying to increase the value so that I can kind of charge a premium price. So if you think about the premium product, they of course charge a premium price. So definitely what they are doing, they're constantly increasing the value. And when they're constantly increasing the value, the champion will be who can constantly reduce the manufacturing cost as well. So those are the things we will be sort of discussing today. How we can sort of play with cost and value and still be like really, really profitable. So when you think about how to do this sort of thing, like talking about cost, talking about value, what should we do? Then two things actually you need to understand. Business level strategy and corporate level strategy. So one of the most fundamental difference between business level strategy and corporate level strategy is the corporate level strategy, they want to play within the industry. When you are talking about business level strategy, for example, a company, they manufacture plastic bottles. You are feeling cold or hot or warm? Cold. What are you talking? You can sit there. Maybe that can be maybe a little bit less cold, or maybe here as well. Okay. Yeah. So let's say, for example, a company, they manufacture this plastic bottle. The lady is like drinking from. So what is business level strategy? Business level strategy is like when organization is only focusing on this plastic bottle. They want to kind of sell this product. They are really kind of thinking about how we can better make more money from this bottle. And that is about kind of a business level strategy. You just play with a product or maybe multiple products. For example, you want to play with one product or multiple products. Where do you want to sit? Okay. Right. So I think they got some charger on that side. Yeah, I can see one's there, but I think it's just only one or two actually. No, you already passed by. I can see one there.
There's one too.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So when you're talking about corporate level strategy, it is not just kind of like the business level strategy. You want to change, sit down? Yeah. Okay, no problem. Where do you want to take to?
Wait,
Oh yeah, please.
I know.
You know. I think like sometimes you feel more cold because you are not talking, you are just sitting there and consuming the cold air. But for me, it's not like that because I'm kind of constantly walking and then kind of talking. So that's why I feel more warm compared to kind of you guys feeling kind of a little bit more cold. Yeah. And of course, temperature is another factor. So I'm from a kind of a country where we are like wear t-shirt in like 10 degrees Celsius, we just wear simple t-shirt, that's it, rather than kind of anything. But yeah, you have a kind of a decorum to follow when you are kind of in a class, when you are kind of in office or teaching or all those stuff. So yeah, never mind. So if you, again, pay some attention to corporate level strategy and business level strategy, they think about the product, or maybe multiple products, 2-3 products within the organization. But corporate level strategy, they think about the company and to whom or who are the companies, those are like your competitor. I mean, I have highlighted, I bold some of the kind of keyword, like several industry and market simultaneously. They are thinking about like the industry. They are not just thinking about like a single product or a service that your company is like selling. Like Microsoft, the corporate level strategy, they don't bother whether the Office 365 doing this or that. No, they don't bother about it. Because that's a business level, that's not their corporate level strategy. Corporate level strategy is like Microsoft thinking about how they can position themselves within the era of generative AI. Whether they should go and collaborate with Google or OpenAI, or maybe how they can kind of compete in the Chinese market, for example. Like in China, yes, their AI is like booming at the moment. So how they could compete in that particular industry? how in China they can introduce their product and how in China they can kind of capture it, market penetration, for example. So that is kind of corporate level strategy. Please don't mix up, because under business level strategy, you just simply talk about the products or service that you are kind of selling, you are developing within your organization in terms of generating value. So that's your business level strategy. So if you ask this question, like what is business level strategy, I just explained. So the 4 questions: who, what, why, and how. Those are 4 questions you need to ask to yourself when you will kind of analyze a business level strategy. So before you sort of choose a business level strategy that you would like to kind of answer, like yes, this is the business level strategy of Apple Corporation I would like to kind of talk about. Ask these 4 questions. Like first one, who, which is which customer segment? Like if Apple, like of course Apple will introduce iPhone 18 this year. Now anyone could tell me like who should be the customer segment for iPhone 18? iPhone 18, they are going to introduce 18 this year, right? In September, like in a couple of months. So what do you think? Who will be the customer segment for Apple 18 this year? Anyone? Go ahead. Who are the customer for iPhone 18? Come again, sorry. Trend?
The one who always follows trends.
Trend, yeah, okay. But is it kind of really broad? Because how to know like who is always following the trend?
It's not money.
Could be. Now this is interesting. You have highlighted a very interesting point. You see, so how many Apple phone users here? How many Apple phone users? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, very good, very good, very good. You have App Store account, right? You need to kind of have an App Store account. Only then you will be able to download the app, right? So how many App Store accounts you have opened over the years, or you are just maintaining one account? Just only one. Anyone here like constantly change Apple account? Because if you when you buy a new phone, you just kind of carbon copy your old phone and automatically it goes to the new phone, and your old phone either you return to Apple or sometimes you give it to someone or destroy it. Right? So you have one Apple account. Now when you mention trend, you know your Apple account can show how many iPhone you are using. How many iPhone you have used, your Apple account can show. Apple, they understand when you say follow the trend, how they are going to follow the trend. They can just check your Apple account and they can tell you whether you are going to buy the next 18 or not. They can just from an Apple account can say, if let's say you follow they follow an Apple account that every year this particular Apple account is registered with a new iPhone, the tendency is almost 95% that when they will introduce iPhone 18, this particular Apple account will be kind of registered with a new iPhone because of your past experience, because of your past behavior. So your past behavior somehow Apple actually knows. Like they can simply predict like this is something you are going to do. So when you're thinking about consumer segment, this is critical. This is critical in a way that consumer segment or consumer targeted consumer, they always show a kind of a characteristics. So for example, a person who changed Apple phone after like 5 years, in 2027, maybe is not gonna change to Apple 18. For example, because the trend shows that this particular Apple ID is linked to a new iPhone in like 4 or 5 years. So the chances are very high that this particular owner of this particular Apple ID is not going to kind of buy an iPhone 8. Chances are very, very low. So you can always, based on information, you can always predict. So this is how people are like kind of using the information and trying to kind of understand, predict the market, like how many iPhones we might be able to sell. I'm not saying this is a kind of an exact number, like they know they are going to sell 1 billion units, or they are going to sell 1 billion units or something like that. But definitely they can have a prediction based on the analytics, based on the data, they can kind of predict it. And interestingly, this sort of analysis, this sort of kind of thing, you can always do in Claude. So you can give all the data to Claude and ask Claude to do this sort of analysis for you, and they can do it. So the second question we should ask, which is customer need, will we satisfy? So when the customer will buy our product, what is the value we are kind of going to offer them? So is there any sort of value we are kind of offering them, or what should we do? So that's the kind of our next second question, like the business level strategy. When you want to kind of make a strategy, customer, what kind of value they need, like how you are going to satisfy your customer, and whether you are satisfying your customer or not, that is the kind of the second question. So what they need, that's the second one. Third one, do we want to satisfy them? Like think about Apple. If someone is like using 17, and the question you should ask whether Apple should satisfy the owner of iPhone 17 with iPhone 18, or what extra they should provide. Because remember, at the very first class, I mentioned about this particular point. When you compare iPhone 16 to iPhone 17, or when you compare iPhone 15 to iPhone 16, you might see extremely little innovation. There is no change maybe, or no innovation at all. It is kind of the same phone. But the moment you will compare, let's say iPhone 10 against iPhone 17, you can definitely notice a lot of changes. You can definitely notice there is a lot of innovation, there is a lot of improvement. So if that is the case, the point I'm trying to kind of highlight, I'm trying to sort of highlight that in some situation, sometimes company will decide who is the sort of targeted consumer, or whether this targeted consumer you would like to satisfy or not. If you really don't want to satisfy that particular targeted consumer, that is absolutely fine. You really don't need to satisfy every single consumer. You have a kind of a targeted consumer base. Some of the consumer base, yes, you want to kind of satisfy them with the value by introducing those value within the market, by introducing those value to them. But some of the consumer, you really don't bother, you really don't care, like whether they are happy with the product or not, because they are not maybe your consumer base. Make sense? And the final question you want to ask, will we satisfy our consumer needs? Like, I want something from this particular product, whether this particular company is like focusing what I need, whether they care about it. Sometimes it is after sale service. Sometimes it is about after sale service. You complete the sale, and then whether you are kind of providing the service to your consumer after the sale. So once you will ask this question will help you to determine your business level strategy that you would like to formulate for your product and service that you want to introduce in the market to sort of compete with other products by other companies actually. So if you look at this diagram, this is interesting, and this is going to help you actually understand like why all of these kind of building blocks or different points of the strategy are interconnected. So industry effect and farm effect. So if you look at industry effect, yes, we did about what are 5 forces, right? That is the impact from the industry. So buyers bargaining power, suppliers bargaining power, competitive rivalry, threats from new entrants, threats of substitute products. So those are your industry attractiveness. and those attractiveness or those forces somehow shaping the behavior of different strategic groups. Strategic groups, in other words, these are called strategic business unit or strategic groups. To understand what is strategic groups, it's about like Microsoft is an organization, but Office 365 is a strategic group. Microsoft operating system, another strategic group. Microsoft Copilot, another strategic group. So you have the head, which is Microsoft. Under that, you have multiple big chunks. Every single chunk is a sort of a strategic group. So how they are shaping the strategic group in order to achieve competitive advantage. And if you look at firm effect, like within the firm, what can happen? We can kind of compare to value proposition, cost proposition. Where value proposition, we think about differentiation. What are the value we want to propose to our consumer? So relative to a competitor. Then we talk about kind of position, cost position, whether we want to achieve a cost leadership. So both value proposition and cost proposition creating the strategy. Cost leadership, differentiation, and blue ocean strategy. We will be talking about all three. But this is how you think from a firm perspective. Now you can see how we are relating. So we learned about external factor in our second lecture. Third lecture, we talked about resource and capability. Now, within the firm, we are going to use those resource and capability to achieve this objective. These are the strategic objectives we want to achieve using the resource and capability that we have discussed yesterday. We talked about dynamic capability, whether we are going to use dynamic capability to achieve what? Whether we have the resource to achieve this kind of objective. Now, this is another discussion, which one we want to achieve, whether we want to achieve cost leadership or want to achieve differentiation or both. Those are the things we will be discussing. But for now, try to understand how we can differentiate external environment, which is your pestle, which is your quarter 5 forces, that is kind of shaping the behavior of industry and shaping the behavior of the strategy group within your organization, your resource and capability, that is about your firm's effect, and that particular firm's effect will help you to rethink about your cost proposition and value proposition, or cost position, value proposition. Think about cost leadership, differentiation, or both, which is a sort of a blue ocean strategy. Is there any question in your mind? Any question you would like to ask? Or any confusion in your mind? Anyone? Yes, go ahead.
So, can you explain more about blue ocean strategy?
Oh, I will explain. I will explain. There is a slide on blue ocean strategy. I will definitely explain. Not now, because before that, I want to thoroughly explain the cost leadership and differentiation. Once you understand both, yes, it will be easy for you to understand blue ocean. I will cover that. So, this is about strategic position and strategic trade-off. I'm not going to kind of read this particular slide, but I will explain this slide from the framework. Okay? So look at the framework. You can just go back and forth and try to kind of relate. So the strategic position and trade-off is plotted here. So I will kind of explain the previous slide from this plotting. Now, on your left hand side here, you have competitive scope, that is your trade-off, and you have strategic position. Now, every company, every single company in this world is either thinking about cost, or thinking about differentiation, or thinking about both. Can you give me one example, like a company, they are not bothered about anything, like they are not bothered about cost or differentiation? Can you name one single company who is not bothered about cost, who is not bothered about differentiation? In Vietnam as well. Is there anything? So the question I would like to ask, is it realistically possible? Is it realistically possible to run a company where they don't bother about cost or differentiation? What do you think? Anyone, please, just talk. Do you think, is it possible? Do you think it is possible to kind of Do you think it's possible? Because the point I'm trying to kind of explain, even if a normal tea shop, for example, they also have to kind of think about differentiation and cost. No company in the world could survive. Like if you talk about Rolls-Royce, Bentley, they are very much onto differentiation. One of a kind car, for example, they don't bother about cost, but they are very much onto differentiation. Whereas if you look at BYD, very aware about cost, because they want to kind of sell their car to people where people can easily afford. But what I'm asking, is it possible realistically to form a company where we will not bother about cost or differentiation? We will not think about these two at all. Is it possible? Or out of your mind, can you name one company, like this particular company exists, they don't bother about cost or differentiation or anything? Because realistically, it's not going to happen. There is no way we can do that. Because, either you are thinking about cost significantly, you want to reduce the cost so that you can make money, you can dump your competitor, you can play hard against your competitor, or you want to differentiate, meaning that your product is like highly different than your competitor's product. One of a kind product, highly differentiated. Or sometimes in between, middle, somewhere in between. Now the point is, so that is your position. But the point is, the trade-off. Either you are only focused on narrow cost leadership, or cost focus, for example, or broad cost leadership. Now, what is the difference between narrow or broad? Do you have any shop in Vietnam where everything is so inexpensive? Like, for example, nothing is more than, let's say, 500,000. All the product you have in that shop is less than 500,000 or less than 200,000. Do you have any type of shop?
There's a fashion shop. They have a target budget for
Everyone, anyone can buy. Very low budget. For example, jewelry shop, like a kind of let's say, what kind of shop is that? Like jewelry or some cosmetics? Fashion item. Okay, let's put it this way: fashion items. Now, if a fashion item shop is only selling inexpensive items, there is no way you can get any expensive item. That is your focused cost leadership. Extremely focused, because you really don't want to sell anything expensive in that shop. But I think, do you have another fashion shop where you can buy a little bit expensive product but low price product as well? I think majority of shops are like that. Majority fashion shops are like that, where you can buy like very affordable, inexpensive product. At the same time, you can buy kind of, let's say, a more affordable one as well. If you are in a mix of type, like, yes, we want to achieve cost leadership, but if you want to sell or if you want to sort of buy a little bit kind of a expensive item, not that expensive, a very little bit expensive, you are here. You are in a cost leadership. Same goes for the differentiation. If you only sell highly differentiated product, let's say Rolls-Royce, they really don't have anything but differentiation. They don't have anything. They have like 2 or 3 models, that's it. Differentiation, highly differentiation. So that is focused differentiation. But if you look at here, which is not focused, I will say Apple Corporation maybe. They focus on differentiation. Their laptop, like they have a range of laptop, but very differentiated. They have their own operating system. MacBooks, for example, iPhone, for example, those are differentiation because they are not about worry about cost. They don't focus on cost leadership, but they focus on differentiation. So do you understand the difference? Because focus differentiation is extremely narrow. It's extremely narrow because let's say Bentley or Lamborghini, for example. But if you look at Porsche, that is not focus differentiation. Porsche is about differentiation rather than extremely narrow. Porsche is sort of broad differentiation rather than extremely narrow differentiation. Make sense? Do you understand the position and trade-off? So once you understand the position and trade-off, so this is sort of the explanation of the generic strategy. We call it Porter's generic strategy. So this Porter's generic strategy, these are further explanation. What is differentiation? Seek to create higher value versus competitor. You want to kind of create value, you are putting kind of features after features, you are kind of increasing the quality of the product, you are kind of making it really exclusive, you are doing all of those sort of stuff. So that is how you are going to kind of differentiate your product. Whereas in the cost leadership, you are always focused on how you can save money. It is all about saving money on a continuous basis. You want to save money, cost leadership. And you want to do that on a continuous basis. Do you understand the difference? The cost leadership and differentiation. And then the narrow competitive scope, as I said, focus differentiation, focus cost leadership. Focus differentiation, like expensive, exclusive pen at several $100s. Mont Blanc, for example. They just produce pen. Amazing pen, those are like super expensive pens. Or I gave you an example, like Lamborghini, for example. Or some of the watches, let's say Rolex. They will never produce anything which is less value or which is affordable price. No. So those are expensive for normal people. Those people who are like filthy rich, yes, they have the affordability to go for a Rolex watch. And then you have focused cost leadership. So focused cost leadership is about disposable pen, lighters at low cost because they are just focused on very low kind of cost kind of area. They are just only focusing on how they can kind of better make profit by lowering the cost. Do you have this company here, BIC? So this is one of the companies really popular in UK. So the pens are like really cheap. I would say like maybe, I don't know, 50,000. You can get a pen, yeah, or maybe less than that, 25,000. The price of the pen. So that's how you sort of understand your focus differentiation, focus cost leadership. Any question on focus cost leadership, focus differentiation? Any question, guys? Girls, any question? So how you can achieve differentiation? what kind of strategy is available for you to achieve differentiation. So if you look at the bullet point, you can think of like new product launches, unique feature that increase the value. How you can increase the value? CD just suddenly told we are going to kind of partner with what OpenAI, and OpenAI will help Siri to give more kind of in-depth information. Maybe one of the idea by Apple Corporation to create value for consumer in terms of differentiation, new product launches, like Apple launches that by Vision Pro, they are kind of thinking of launching a new product, which is, for example, the eyeglass, for example. They want to kind of introduce kind of the glass. So that can be a new product, for example. So if the company sort of introduce those sort of product, if the company introduce those sort of kind of thing, yes, it is a kind of a value creation. Sooner or later, the Apple Corporation will introduce, for example, hologram or holographic technology. If those things will take place in future, that is about differentiation of how you can kind of create more value. What extra you can do for your customer. What are the things you can kind of introduce? Anything extra you can offer. Anything, something more you can kind of offer. Those are the things will be your differentiation. Now, 3 drivers that increase perceived value, like I really want to kind of increase the value. You are thinking, deep inside you are thinking, like you want to kind of run a business. Suddenly you realize like now I really want to kind of increase the value. What are the questions I should ask to myself in order to analyze my firm's strategy so that I can increase the value? Number 1, product feature. What else I can do? Which other product feature I can add? Like the product is doing really well. Let's say this particular laptop providing all the service and everything. What else we can do? What other feature I can add within the existing product? Followed by customer service. Of course, when you sell a product, when you sell a service, of course your customer demand some after-sale service. A lot of customers just switch from one to another because the sales service is not there, because they are pissed off, because of pissed off by the services. And number 3 is about compliments. Compliments means, remember we learned about compliments. Like for example, Apple is introducing one product, but at the same time they are also introducing the App Store. The App Store complements the Apple device. The Play Store in Google complements the Google device. So, is there any compliments you can think of? Like what compliments I can introduce with my product so that it's gonna kind of complement after the sales, and it's gonna kind of create a kind of a continuous income for us. I mean, how many of you have printer at home? Do you have printing machine? Like you can print paper. Do you have printing machine? Anyone here? Think about it. Printer is a machine, but what is the complements here? Not really. Paper you can buy, exactly. Paper you can buy from third party, but the ink is the complement because you repetitively have to buy the ink from that particular company, otherwise your printer will not run. You can use third party ink, but the printer will not give the same service if you use the third party ink. So that's how the complements work. You create a product and then you constantly think about how we can kind of make my consumer heavily dependable. Like they are going to depend on us, they will not have any other option but to buy the complement from us as well. Is there any other example you would like to provide? Think about it. Like think 1 minute. Like, is there any other example? Like this is a product and this is the complement. Coffee machine. Well, coffee is a complement, but
the package of the coffee is only fixed.
well, if those though, I mean, yeah, there are like two types of coffee machine. One is, for example, the normal brewing machine, but there is another one which is pot, the pot system. Yes, you must buy the pot which is exclusively made for those machines. Only then you can kind of brew that particular coffee. So coffee pot, yes, absolutely right. I totally agree with you. Like for guys, think about Gillette. I think guys, you use Gillette, the shaving razor. So that particular shaving razor, Gillette, but any type of razor, the blade is exclusively for those razors. You just simply cannot buy any other blade and put it in, use that for your razor. Those are very specific, right? Compliments. So there are like a lot of compliments nowadays. People think of like, I'm going to manufacture or create a product, but it will come with a compliment and I will make a recurring profit from those compliments again and again and again. So, for example, the company responsible for manufacturing cigarettes, for example, they often invest in insurance company because they know it very well. Cigarettes or smoking cigarettes kills, and the people who smoke more cigarette will have high chance to get a kind of a heart attack or maybe cancer, for example. So the money this cigarette company makes, they always invest in hospital because technically you smoke cigarette and end up in a hospital. Compliment. So that's how they think. You will often see this kind of vicious cycle. So when you will develop a strategy, maybe for your company, that the company you will work for, or maybe for your own business, let's say after your graduation you will work for a company, maybe those your manager will come and say, gentlemen, gentlewomen, why don't you kind of design a product and let us know like kind of a product you want to kind of sell and how better we can kind of capture the market. So if they want to do something like that and then asking for a kind of a strategy, asking for kind of your feedback, you can always think about this way. Like I need to develop a complement for the product we are selling, and that is how I'm going to make recurring profit. Only making profit, that is outstanding, fine. But if you can create a loop, a recurring profit loop, it will continuously generate revenue for you. Like in UK, companies heavily, like companies who sell, for example, EV, heavily investing in terms of developing energy, creating energy, because the more they can sell their car, the more electricity will be needed, and those electricity at the end of the day that you can again buy from them because they can offer you some exclusive price. Let's say Tesla Energy. So if you buy a Tesla car and then Tesla Energy can give you more competitive price. Let's say if the per unit price of electricity is 100,000, let's say on an average price, but if you own a Tesla car and if you kind of buy your subscription from Tesla Energy, instead of paying 100,000, you pay, let's say 80,000, 20% discount. So it is called a recurring profit loop. Make sense? These are the questions you have to ask to yourself when you think about differentiation. Not for your own business, maybe for the businesses you will work for after your graduation. In terms of cost leadership, how to minimize the cost? Of course, one of the easiest ways, reduce the manufacturing cost. We want to achieve cost leadership. We want to reduce our cost. One of the most easiest way is reduce the manufacturing cost. Go for more supplier. Go for more supplier. Go for automation. Go for, let's say, introduce artificial intelligence if they can kind of do some job for you. So all the mechanism you follow. And when you follow this sort of mechanism, So the value minus cost, so this is value, this is cost, and the moment the value minus cost, you can kind of increase this particular figure. If you, the more you increase the particular figure, the more you will be able to achieve the cost leadership. So the value you are generating, so you can call it the sales price, and the more you are going to kind of increase the value, maybe through differentiation or maybe not doing anything, if it is a rock solid product, just people are buying it, but you want to reduce the cost, you will end up getting more profit. So that's sort of your cost leadership strategy. And if we go forward, driver that keeps your core lows, like something you really want to do and something you want to kind of achieve, trying to sort of minimize the cost. Like, yes, the manufacturing cost is 100,000 to manufacture one single product. Maybe, for example, this braid, the manufacturing cost of this braid or that braid you are having, let's say 100,000. What we can do to ensure cost reduce? Of course, we can source raw material in terms of reducing the cost. We can source it. Economies of scale we can achieve. I will talk about economies of scale further. Then we have the learning curve, we have the experience curve. So reduce the manufacturing cost, that is straightforward. But try to understand the concept of economies of scale. Do you understand economies of scale? Because this is something you should learn before. Economies of scale, anyone? Have you learned the concept in your accounting or those sort of module before? All right, never mind. Economies of scale is about you lower the per unit fixed cost of the product that you are manufacturing. I repeat, economies of scale is about lowering the per unit fixed cost. Now, please pay some attention. When you are thinking about cost, I mean, have you done any accountancy module where you learned about fixed cost and variable cost? Yes. So, what is variable cost? Cost that can change based on the raw material, based on the supply. But the fixed cost is about rent, plant and machinery. Those are fixed costs, right? In the economies of scale analysis, your variable cost, you just simply cannot control. Your variable cost increase when you increase production. Let's say previously you produced 100 units, now you want to produce 150 units. Variable cost will increase. But if previously, in order to produce 100 units, let's say the fixed cost was 100,000. However, if you want to go for 150 per unit instead of 100 units, the fixed cost can still stay the same, which is 100,000. Yes, you are achieving economies of scale because per unit cost is decreasing from 1 dong to 0.80 dong. That 0.20 is your economies of scale. So it is not about per unit variable cost because you just simply cannot reduce per unit variable cost. That's why it is variable. But you can control the fixed cost. Per unit fixed cost can be lower, and if you can minimize per unit fixed cost by increasing the production line, yes, you can achieve economies of scale. So decrease in the cost per unit as output increases. So you are increasing the output. Previously you used to produce 100 units, now you want to produce 150 units, and the fixed cost of the product will decrease. The overall cost per unit will decrease because of the declination in your fixed cost. So that is all about economies of scale. Any question on economies of scale? Anyone? Any question on economies of scale? Guys, girls, any question? All right. So let's proceed to your learning curve and experience curve. So let's say you open a business like 10 years ago, and for the last 10 years you are running the organization. When you run an organization, it is all about kind of learning by doing things. Do you have any bachelor degree in Vietnam, like apprenticeship? Are you familiar with this word, apprenticeship? So the idea is like in UK we have apprenticeship program. So that is similar to bachelor degree, like 3 years bachelor degree. However, a student only spend 1 week in every semester at the university, and the rest of the time of the year they work for an organization. So they don't study kind of normal thing. They just spend 1 week in every semester at a university, and the rest of the weeks they work for an organization. That's called apprenticeship program. So do you have that kind of bachelor degree in Vietnam? Guys, girls? Any type of bachelor degree like that in Vietnam?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Yeah, I mean maybe in the future. Because the way world is changing, maybe in the future. So this is quite popular in UK. So after your A-level, for example, or after your college, for example, instead of coming to a university, you go to a company and then say, I want to do an apprenticeship program. So please give me a job, and you don't need to pay me for work. So you will not get payment, but you will work for that organization. But then at the same time you will get a degree from a university, and where you just need to study like 1 week in one semester. So if let's say you have 2 semesters every year, technically you will spend only 2 weeks at the university, and rest of the year you work for the company. We call it learning by doing things. You learn by doing things. You learn by working for someone. That is about learning curve within organization. You are running the organization, or you are working for an organization. You are sort of learning, less time to produce output with experience. You are developing your experience, and like think about your early days. For example, when you first joined this university like 3 years ago, maybe you required, let's say, 1 hour to complete or read, understand 1 page. But after 3 years, all of you are in your final year, maybe you will not need more than, let's say, 20 minutes to complete, read and understand 1 single paper. You can do it really, really fast. So if you can do that, the idea is you are learning by doing things with experience. You are building on your experience. You are learning. Make sense? Make sense? Alright, so that is about your learning curve. And then finally your experience curve. Now you don't get misled, because experience curve, we are not using the word experience, but the learning curve we are using the word experience. So be careful when you are kind of analyzing this kind of a topic for your assignment and in your final examination. So experience curve, it is more about improvement to technology and production process. The more you adapt technology, the more you adapt new production process, the more you do innovation, then it is about your experience curve. Let me kind of explain from a figure. So economies of scale, any question? So we already explained, we already learned this particular, we already discussed this slide. Do you have any question on economies of scale? Can you just spend like 1 minute, read the slide, and if you have any question, feel free to ask. I already explained what is economy of scale is. It is all about reducing your per unit cost by reducing the fixed cost, not the variable cost. It is extremely difficult to reduce the variable cost unless you have control over your raw material. But you can reduce your fixed cost by increasing the production, the output production. So if you do that, it is your economy of scale. And economy of scope, that is something I haven't discussed. So economy of scope, it is more about saving from different type of product which is more than one. Now it says 2 outputs, it can be 3. If you can reduce the overall cost of products per unit by producing more than one output, that is about your economies of scope. Scope is talking about more than one production line. For example, you know Volkswagen Group, you heard the name, right? Volkswagen Group. So Volkswagen Group, they own multiple car brands. So they have control on Seat, they have control over Audi, for example. They are owner of Lamborghini, they also own Porsche, they also own Seat we mentioned, Skoda, for example. All of these brands are under Volkswagen. So Volkswagen, what they did, most of the family cars, like for example Volkswagen itself, and you have Seat, you have Audi, you have what else? Not Bentley, but 4 or 5 brands under Volkswagen Group. They are using the same engines. They are using the same engines. So when Volkswagen Group are like developing the same engines for 4 or 5 different car brands, it is kind of significantly helping for Volkswagen Group to achieve the economies of scope, because they are sort of producing products which can provide multiple output and overall can reduce the per unit cost of the product or the car they are producing. So when you have that kind of mechanism within your organization, like instead of producing, let's say, 1 type of bun, I will produce 3 type of bun with some extra feature, with some extra value. Let's say you have 1 croissant, and then you have another croissant with chocolate, you have another type of croissant with jelly, for example. 3 type of product, 3 different value, but then it is the raw material is the same. Is the flour you have used. You have the same fish cost. You have the same oven you use in terms of manufacturing or creating that croissant. So if that is something, if you can achieve and reduce the cost, like share the same resource and technology. In terms of technology, here is a microwave or an electric oven to create the bake the croissant, and then using the same resource, is the same flour. At the end, what you are doing, you are putting some chocolates in one, you are putting some jelly in one, and you are putting some, let's say, butter in one, and these are like 3 different products, selling to maybe 3 different consumers. If that is the case, economies of scope. Again, it will help you to reduce the cost of product cost of per unit product. It can help you to achieve that. So do you understand the scale and the scope? It is little bit tricky, but please do not do silly mistake in your final exam. So don't do mistake in your final exam. So if you have any question, please ask now. I'm more than happy to kind of answer your question if you have anything for me. Any question? Anyone? Yes, go ahead. Well, it's not about economies of scope is same as complement, but with complement you can achieve economy of scope. Try to understand the economies of scale and scope. What is the objective? What we want? What we want when we do economies of scale and economies of scope? We want to reduce the per unit cost. I want to reduce the per unit cost, I want to go for economies of scale, or I want to go for economies of scope, or maybe I want to go for both. The mechanism to achieve it can be complements. Like how I can achieve economies of scope? Yes, through complement I can achieve it. So for one group of product, I'm not offering complements. Another group of product, I'm offering 20% complements. Another group of product, I'm offering 30% complements. Another line of product, I'm offering 70% complements. That's how you change the product out. You change the output, and then yes, you achieve economies of scope. Make sense? So complement is a sort of a mechanism to achieve it, rather than it is not the same like economies of scope. The idea of scope and scale is I want to reduce per unit cost. Overall per unit cost I want to reduce. That's it. That's my objective. Any question? Any question? Girls, guys, any question? Alright. Let's proceed. So, as I said, the economy of scale, the per unit fixed cost, and per unit overall cost. If you reduce per unit fixed cost, the overall cost will come down, right? So, the Q is your output. This is your per unit cost. At the very beginning, let's say you just open an organization. At the very beginning, the per unit cost will be really high. Over the time, over the years, your per unit cost will decrease. That is your economies of scale. However, for example, well, can you give me a example from Vietnam? Like, do you have any recurring natural disaster in Vietnam? Like recurring means like every 2-3 years, maybe the natural disaster can hit. Like for example, if you look at Japan, earthquake is like a recurring event. Indonesia, they are vulnerable. Some of the Indonesian part is vulnerable to tsunami. Do you have anything in Vietnam? Like this is something can happen repetitively? Flooding. Is it like serious flooding, like people die? Syria, okay, excellent. So, no, I'm so sorry. It is not excellent. It is not excellent. I'm just saying the example is relevant. I'm so sorry. I understand. Right, now think about this particular bread company, the company manufacturing this bread. Those companies are located in an area where this natural disaster can hit. Guys, think about this particular bread company, the company manufacturing this particular bread. 3 of the plant is located in a place where this flood can happen. Now, what I'm trying to say, even if you achieve economies of scale, let's say due to flood, all of those plants got kind of destroyed in a fraction of hours, you can become again these economies of scale, and anything can happen. So don't sit on that the moment I achieve economies of scale, it's not gonna change. It's gonna change. It can change due to many reasons. I just used one, which is, for example, a natural disaster. Now, I have this task for you. Please open your cell phone and scan the QR code. And I would like to know, please don't